In this tutorial, you're going to be shooting video footage and editing it. So at this point, it's assuming that you have already shot your footage and you're now ready to edit it in Adobe Premiere Pro. So we're going to go ahead and open the program, and you can start a new project. You can also do this from File, New. And when you get the new project window, go ahead and give this a name so that you can find it later. We're going to call this Tutorial 1. And then make sure you also select the correct folder. So I've created a folder on my desktop for Premiere Tutorials. And in my Premiere Tutorial 1 folder, I have folders created for both imports and exports. And in my imports folder, I have all my raw video footage. The Premiere file that we're going to save doesn't go in either one of these folders, it just goes in the main tutorial folder. Also click on the Scratch Disks tab and make sure that all of these say Same as Project. This is where the program saves a bunch of small files, things so that you can undo or go back if you need to a few steps, and so it's important to keep those files with the rest of your project in the same place. This is the main Premiere interface that you'll be using to edit your video, and as you can see, there are a couple of different panels. Some of the buttons will look familiar from the other Adobe programs. There's also some differences because of the complexity of video editing. So we're going to go ahead and first import our video footage. So over here, there's a couple ways that you can do that through the media browser. I'm going to go ahead and import them so that they show up in this Project tab. So I'm going to go to File and Import. And within my tutorial folder, and I have my imports folder. And these are clips that I shot at the Terrell Library at Washington State University in Pullman. And I'm going to go ahead and hold down Shift so I can select those all at once. And notice that I have previously named these files. That is a good idea to do that before you import your clips so that it's easier to identify them. However, you can also organize them in Premiere if you need to. Usually the import will go pretty fast, and now you can see that all my files are listed down here in the lower left. And I can also use some of these controls down here to zoom in and out. I can switch from a list view to a thumbnail view if I want. I'm going to go ahead and leave it the way it was because it's easier to see the titles of my different clips. The first thing we're going to do is create a sequence, so a video, that includes just all the raw footage to show that you completed that portion of the tutorial. And to start with that, you're going to use your establishing shot to start it off. So I find my establishing shot clip here. If you need to preview what's in your clips, you can either use the thumbnail mode, which is this button down here, or if you double click a clip, it will appear up in the top preview pane as well, the source panel up here. If you are in Adobe CS6 or older, you will already have a sequence showing up here in the timeline panel over on the right. If you're in a newer version, it won't be there until you drag a clip in or add a sequence. But once you drag that clip over here, it makes a new sequence. It gives it a default name that matches the clip you drag in, which you can change. And you'll also see your sequences over in your media panel over here. So that's something that you can revisit in multiple ways. Once we have something on our timeline, we've already started editing the video. So you can preview your video in this top right panel. And you'll do all the editing down here in the timeline. You can see that there are actually two tracks from this one clip. That's because the top represents the video and the bottom represents the audio. As you've done in Audition, you can expand these tracks to be able to see greater detail, including a little thumbnail. That will be important later when we use keyframes, but right now you can either make them any size that you want. You can use the slider over on the right to adjust both the size and your view. You can also adjust your view down here. This is not changing the length of the clip, it's zooming in and out on your timeline so you can see more or less. You can always see the timestamps here that show you how long each clip is and how long your total video is as well. So once we have the first clip on there, if you get a warning, by the way, that says that your clip doesn't match the sequence settings, go ahead and change the sequence at any point. Now we're going to go ahead and drag our other clips in order. So I'm going to do my first subject. And I have 3 clips. Each one of my files includes 3 different shots because I took them all as one continuous video file. So you may have more or fewer files depending on how you shot your footage. And all I'm doing is dragging over here from the left into the timeline over here. And again, I can adjust the view to make sure that I see all my clips there. And I do, and I can also preview it up here. Using the controls, I can play it. This includes audio. There wasn't much because I was in a library, but you should be able to hear the audio that goes with your clips at this point as well. If you've shot a full amount of footage that you were supposed to, you should have at least 3 minutes at the very minimum. More likely you'll have somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes, and that's perfect. Go ahead and save your project regularly. Premiere does have a tendency to crash because it is kind of an intense program, so make sure you are saving your work as long as between each step if possible. Now we're going to go ahead and create a new sequence for our edited footage. So a new sequence allows you to basically create another video within the same project without starting over. So we're going to go up to File, New, and Sequence. And at this point it wants you to pick the settings for your sequence and give it a name. We're going to go ahead and give it a name. I'm just going to call it Edited Sequence. But you don't need to worry about the other settings too much at this point. So now you can see that you can toggle between your 2 different sequences with these tabs. And we're going to go ahead and start building our second sequence. So instead of placing entire clips by dragging them, we can also double-click on the clips and place just a portion of it based on the viewer up here in the top left. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a clip from my establishing shot. And when I want it to start, I'm going to click on this mark in point. And now I'm going to make sure I have at least 5 seconds. And then I'm going to click on the mark out point. That isolates a certain portion of this clip. And then I'm going to use this little film strip icon that will give me only the video rather than the video and the audio. And if I drag that to my timeline, here's one of the warnings. If you get this, say change sequence settings. And now, as you can see, I have a little clip on my timeline, and it did not include the audio this time. We're going to do that again with our other clips. So you should have shot 2 subjects with 9 shots total for each one. So 3 distances from 3 angles. At this point, you're going to pick just 5 shots from within that you want to include. So I'm going to double click on this clip to have it appear up in the source panel. I'll use this as my starting shot. Make sure each one is approximately 2 seconds. If you need to adjust the in and out point, you can drag up here, or you can also re-click the buttons to reset them. Once you've isolated a little clip, you can go ahead and drag it to your timeline. Make sure to vary your angles and your distances as you're picking clips. You don't want to have two in a row that are too similar. Here's my third angle, which also includes different distances. I'll do my close-up shot from this angle. And one of the reasons you shoot using the 10-second rule is that, especially if you're not using a tripod, you might end up with some shaky footage, or with 10 seconds sometimes something interesting happens, like a person walks by, and so you want to always pick the most interesting part of the shot if you can. So now I have 3 shots. I'm going to go back and pick a couple more. Let's see, I'm going to have to adjust that one again. A couple ways to do that. Close-up shots are really versatile, so if you're going to overshoot anything, make sure you get lots of nice close-up shots. Alright, I'm going to use my extreme close-up here from this angle. Again, I'm just clicking the in and out points and then dragging from the little film strip icon. Now I have one sequence. I can scrub through it kind of as quickly as I want to preview that down here. I can also play through it using these controls. And your spacebar is a good tool to know for faster or for playing and pausing. Now I'm going to do that with my second angle as well. And note that you can adjust your clips down here on the timeline. You can use the selection tool, kind of like you did in Audition, to drag out clips. So even though I'm only choosing a portion of it, the whole clip is still there. And I can access that from my timeline without returning to the source clip if I want. If you need to adjust your clips or the placement of them, there's multiple ways to do that. You can use things like the various tools here actually have different uses, and we'll go ahead and go over some of those in the more advanced tutorial, but also know that you can just move things around on your timeline. If you do move a clip onto another clip, it will eat away at the one that got dragged onto. The content isn't gone for good, but if you do that by accident, you can always undo. Alright, there's 3 clips there. And I'm going to pick one more from one of my previous angles. Now that you have your clips in order, you want to make sure that you have roughly 25 to 35 seconds of footage at this point. If you have more than that, you might want to make some adjustments so that you have a reasonable amount of footage at this point. You should also watch through your sequence to make sure that your cuts seem logical, that you don't need to reorder anything or maybe pick different shots. That's the whole idea of having a lot of variety to work with, is that if something doesn't seem quite right, you can choose a different shot. Once everything looks good with your basic sequence, we are ready to start the next step, which is adding some audio. We're going to go ahead and use the same audio file we've used before. If you haven't already saved it into your imports folder, you want to go ahead and do that. I have it in my imports folder, and you can download it from the website if you don't still have it on your computer from the last unit. And when I import it, that audio file will appear over here, and I can drag that into A1, the audio track of my timeline. You can adjust the audio tracks the same way so that you can see more or less. They have similar buttons that will seem familiar from using Audition, and you'll recognize the song for sure. The song is a lot longer than our audio clips, and we don't need the rest of it, so let's leave about 5 seconds of extra space at the end of the clip, and we'll go ahead and trim that in. I'm still using the black arrow, or the selection tool here, the arrow tool. You could also use the razor tool, just like you have those options in Audition. And you can see that there are some waveforms included here. There's 2 tracks because it's a stereo file, similar to editing audio in Audition. In our next step, we're going to be adding titles. To do this, you can go up to Title, New Title, and we're going to do Default Still. So we're going to go ahead and, the defaults here are usually fine. We're going to go ahead and add a title to the very beginning of our video. If you see a blank screen come up here, it usually means that you're at the very end of the video, so no video footage is showing, and you can drag on this clip here, or you can go back to your timeline over here to drag your scrubber to a different spot, so that you can see how the title will actually look on your project. Uh-oh, that might have crashed things here. Okay, it recovered. Remember to save your projects. Premiere can be a tricky one for that. This title is going to go at the beginning of the video, but this is okay. I can use, you can add it at any point here because you'll be changing where, you'll still be deciding where it fits in your video anyway. What you're first going to do is have a title that introduces the location of your video. So this will be the title that shows up at the beginning. I'm going to call mine Tarot Library Reference Section. And you can adjust the text the same way you do in other programs. You can pick a font up here or over on the right side. I'm just going to pick a kind of nice sans serif font. I'm going to make it bold so it stands out. I'm going to center mine. Here's kind of a nifty tip, is that you can use these centering buttons over here on the left to make it perfectly centered on your screen if you want. In this case, I actually want to move it down a little bit, but it is nice to have it perfectly centered in the middle. Once you have your text about the size you like, you can also adjust that in multiple ways. Anytime you see this blue text and these double arrows in Premiere, you can actually drag to make those numbers change, which is kind of neat. And also pay attention to these outside rectangles. This shows you what might not show up depending on how the video was displayed, so you don't want to have your text too close to the edges. Over here on the right, go ahead and click the checkbox for shadow. That will add a little drop shadow so that your text will show against the background a little bit more clearly. And once you're pretty satisfied with your title, you can go ahead and close this box, and you'll notice that your title appears down here in your project pane. And you can drag that, just like a video clip, onto your project. In this case, I dragged it onto the V2 video file. You can use the eyeball symbols just like you do in the other Adobe programs to either view or hide that content. And we're going to just make this about the same length as that establishing shot at the beginning of our video. Just like in Premiere, or just like Premiere is similar to Photoshop and Illustrator, whatever is on top shows, but they also stack on top of each other. So whatever is in the top track is what we see on top in our video. We're going to make another title for the end of our video. You can try out the roll or the crawl if you want. You can see how those work. I'm just going to go ahead and do another still, which is also a perfectly fine option. And this is what we're going to do at the end. This is already titled to. It assumes that you want to, that you might want to copy an existing title, which you can do as well. I'm going to go ahead and move the scrubber down toward the end of my selection just so I don't see that other text that makes things kind of confusing. This will eventually go on a black background, so you don't need to add a shadow, but we want it to say filmed and edited by, and then you'll include your first name and last name. Filmed and edited by first name, last name. Note that if you have it actually say first name, last name instead of your actual name, you will not get full credit for this assignment, so please make sure you're paying attention to that. I'm going to go ahead and make this bold as well. If I need to adjust this text box, I could do that using the black arrow tool, just like we've done in other programs. I'm going to center that. I'm going to center my box to the middle of this frame as well. And I'm going to bring it down toward the middle for the text. I can't see that too well. This is a good example where you might want to take it all the way to the end of the video just so you can see it against the black background. That looks pretty good. Once you're happy with it, you can go ahead and close the editing window and you'll see that appearing down here. So we can drag that title to our timeline. And this time we're going to trim it so it fits right into that space after our video has ended, but while the music is still playing. Finally, we're going to add some transitions to our audio and video. These will make some fading in on the audio and likewise for the video titles so that the transitions are a little bit more subtle. You can find the transitions in the Effects tab that's part of the lower left panel. And we're going to start out with the audio transitions. So you can open that folder. We're going to use Constant Power. And you can drag that just to the very beginning of your audio clip. And you'll drag it again, another copy of that effect, to the very end. And if we zoom in, we can actually see what that looks like. And you can change it. If you wanted this to fade out more gradually, you can lengthen that effect. You can also shorten it. We'll lengthen it just a little bit, and now we can go ahead and actually play that, and you'll hear that the music now fades in. And likewise, we'll be able to hear that the music at the end fades out. We're going to now add transitions to our titles as well and the end of our clip. So now we're going to go to the video transitions and go to Dissolve. At the very end on our last video clip, we're going to use the dip to black transition. So that goes on the very end of this clip here. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky to see. Go ahead and expand that track and zoom in if you're finding that difficult to see. So now we can see that dip to black effect. And if we preview it real quick, we can see that it's working. Now we're going to go ahead and add transitions on our text. We're going to use the cross dissolve. And we're going to add one of those to both the beginning and end of each one of our titles. And now we can play the whole thing through and we'll see those transitions. Once your video is ready to go, make sure you are continually saving it. And then you're going to export your sequences by going to File and Export in Media. This is here you can preview the video, and you can actually even change how much of it you are including by changing these little endpoints down here. We want to include the whole thing because it will include our full sequence. And also make sure that you have the right time length here. It needs to be between 30 and 40 seconds to get full credit. And you can either pick specialized export settings or you can just click Match Sequence Settings. And when you're ready to go, you can click Q. That will allow you to export your other sequence at the same time without waiting. And before you do that, make sure that you have selected by clicking on, let me do that again to show you. So you click on the name here on Output Name, and that allows you to choose where this is going to be saved. We want to save it into exports. Edited sequence. That sounds good. You could rename it here if you want. And sometimes the exporting can take a while if it's a longer video. Fortunately, in this case, it did not. Then you're going to do the same thing with your other sequence to show your work that you had the full amount of footage to start with. So you're going to go to File, Export, and Media. And likewise, it's a good idea to check that you have all the content you expect showing up down here. Whoops. I accidentally hit the button for the media encoder. We're going to go ahead and match the sequence settings again and click this name to make sure we're saving it in the right place. It's saving still in exports, so that's fine. And we're going to say Q. In a later step, you'll be uploading your completed videos. And make sure that you watch them before you upload them to make sure that they've exported the way that you expect.